Hey guys, this is contextual geometry. I don't have a cool slide up this time, but this is contextual geometry, and we're going to talk about Pythagorean theorem. This is section 6.6 in our book, so a little Pythagorean theorem work today. All right, so Pythagorean theorem we know can only be used with right triangles, and so let's get a right triangle up here. Pythagorean theorem deals with the relationship of the sides and the hypotenuse of the right triangle. Remember, the hypotenuse is always the side opposite the right angle. It will always be the longest side because this is the largest angle. So there's my hypotenuse, leg, leg. And so the Pythagorean theorem, and you should have this in your notes, says the hypotenuse squared is equal to the sum of the legs squared. Now, we don't write these words out every time. We have letters that go with these sides, make it a little easier on us. It doesn't matter which side is A or B, but C is always the hypotenuse. So C squared equals A squared plus B squared. It can also be written as A squared plus B squared equals C squared. That's the same equation or formula, so you can write it either way. All right, so let's look at a few problems. Remember, has to be a right triangle. All right, so number one, we are supposed to find the missing measure, the missing side length. So we have a 4 centimeter side and a 3 centimeter side, and we're missing the hypotenuse. So C squared equals A squared plus B squared. We're going to have to be careful about order of operations. It's been a little while since we've really talked about exponents and adding and all that good stuff. So order of operations says that I'm supposed to square these first and then add them together. So C squared is equal to 16 plus 9, which is 25. Last step, take the square root of both sides. The square root undoes this square. They are inverse operations. So C is equal to, it's actually plus or minus 5, because a positive 5 squared gives me 25 and a negative 5 squared gives me 25. But since we're talking about side lengths, we don't need that negative. It doesn't make sense. So C is 5. But keep in mind, there are actually two solutions or two answers here, but only one solution. Only one of them works when we plug it back into the problem. All right, so you go ahead and try numbers 4 and 5, and just go ahead and pause the video and then come back and we'll talk. All right, now that you're back, for number 4, C squared equals A squared plus B squared. Notice we are missing a leg this time. So 8 squared is equal to 9 squared. Oh, excuse me, that is not correct, is it? The hypotenuse goes here. So 9 squared is equal to 8 squared plus B squared. So 9 squared is 81, is equal to 64 plus B squared. All right, so I'm going to solve for B squared. I'm going to isolate B squared. I want to get it by itself. So I need to get rid of the 64. So let's subtract 64 from both sides. There's my equal sign. So I needed to go from here, and it's positive, so I'm going to subtract. And 81 minus 64 is 17, so B squared is equal to 17. And then I'll take the square root of both sides. So B is plus or minus 17, but we know that only the positive is going to work. So square root of 17 is my answer. So square root of 17, a little bit bigger than 4. The square root of 16 is 4, so maybe about 4.1. And you can use your calculator to approximate that. All right, or you can leave it, just the square root of 17. All right, so let's look at number 7. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. We don't know C, but we do know A and B. So C squared is equal to 9 plus 25. 3 times 3, 9. 5 times 5, 25. C squared is equal to 34. So C is the square root of 34. After we take the square root of both sides, that gives me C. And remember, plus or minus, but it's side length, so we just need the plus. So maybe the question is now, well, how is 34 the longest side? When you approximate that, it's almost 6. All right, remember square root of 36 is 6, so we're close to 6 here, so that's pretty good. All right, we're going to grab a couple of these guys. Let's look at number 1. In a softball game, how far must the catcher throw to second base? So when I look at this, this is a right triangle. What side do I need, the hypotenuse or the leg? Well, it's opposite the right angle, so I need the hypotenuse. So this is C. So C squared equals 60 squared plus 60 squared. C squared is 3,600 plus 3,600. All right, so how did I do that so quickly? 6 times 6 is 36. And when we square it, we're going to get two zeros, right? So if you write it like this, like old-timey, how we used to do it, there are the two zeros. 6 times 6 is 36. All right, so C squared equals 7,200. And then C is equal to the square root of 7,200. So let's get our handy dandy calculator out. And let's see what the square root of 7,200 is. Now, you guys from here, I don't want you to leave it as square root of 7,200. Let's go ahead and get an approximation here so we know how far it is. So I got that it's about 84.85 feet. Make sure you get units on there. So I rounded to the nearest hundredth, and make sure you get the units on there. All right, let's do one more. Go ahead and try number 3. And go ahead and pause the video, and then we'll come back and talk. All right, now that you're back, if Brittany is 32 miles due east of Oxford, and Myers is 21 miles due south of Oxford, how far is the shortest distance from Myers to Brittany? So I'm looking for this distance. There's my right angle, so we're looking for C. C squared equals 21 squared plus 32 squared. All right, so let's figure out what 21 squared is. Remember, that's 21 times 21, so 441, plus 32 squared is 1,024. And then we'll add those guys together, keeping the C squared on this side. Don't just get rid of that or forget about it. So adding these two guys together, 1,465, and now it's time to take the square root. So you just keep working that side until you get down to one number, and then we'll take the square root when we get it down to one number. All right, so square root of 1,465 is approximately, so notice the wavy, approximately 38.275, which means it's 0.28, rounding to the nearest hundredth. All right, here's a couple more and we'll be finished. All right, so finding the missing side length. Good old A didn't come off this time. Love that. All right, so let's grab a couple of these. We've done where C has been missing. Let's do number 12. So let's go ahead and sketch our right triangle. All right, so let's see. C is 100. B is 60. And we don't know A. It doesn't matter which leg you put as A or B. It kind of switched it up here. We'd been having A here and B here. Doesn't really matter. So C squared equals A squared plus B squared. Hypotenuse squared is equal to the sum, adding together, of the legs squared. All right, so 100 squared equals 60 squared. Oops, that's B, isn't it? 100 squared equals A squared plus 60 squared. Now, would it really have mattered? No, not really. I could have written A here or here. It doesn't really matter. All right, so this is a 1 with 4 zeros when we square that. So that makes that 10,000 equals A squared plus 3,600. All right, getting A squared by itself. Let's get that 3,600 out of the way. So we'll subtract 3,600 from both sides. So this is like 100 minus 36, which would be 6,400 equals A squared. All right, then we shall take the square root of both sides. So A is equal to, okay, so let's think about this. The square root of 6,400 is like 64 times 100. The square root of 64 is 8. The square root of 100 is 10. And 8 times 10 is 80. Another way to do that problem, if you've forgotten about square roots, that works. All right, last type of problem I want to show you. Find the lengths of 3 sides of a right triangle. Or, excuse me, 3 sides of a right triangle are given. Is it a right triangle? All right, so to be a right triangle, the Pythagorean theorem has to work. So remember we said Pythagorean theorem only works on a right triangle. It works, the converse is true too. For a triangle to be a right triangle, the Pythagorean theorem has to work. The Pythagorean theorem works. All right, so let's try number 18 and see. The long side will always be C. So first thing you need to do is pick out that longest side, and that's going to be C. And remember, it doesn't matter on the other two. So 5 squared equals 3 squared plus 4 squared. So this is checking to see if a triangle is a right triangle. 25 equals 9 plus 16. 25 equals 25. Check. This is a right triangle. All right, let's try number 22. All right, longest side is C. And then the other two don't matter. So let's pick out that one. So 15 squared equals 5 squared plus 10 squared. All right, so we have to square these first before we add them together. So don't be trying to add 5 and 10 right here. That is not order of operations. All right, 15 squared is 225 equals 25 plus 100. 10 squared is 100. 225, is that equal to 125? Well, no. So this could be a triangle, but it's not a right triangle. All right, guys, I hope that makes sense. We'll work some more on this when I see you soon. This is Coach Lowe, and I'm